Shabbat Shalom. Shalom. Last Tuesday, we had our solidarity gathering for Israel with Oak Park Temple. And one of our speakers was from Oak Park Temple, Jonathan Franklin. And he talked about his experience of being at one of the kibbutzes that were kibbutzim that were attacked 2 weeks ago near the Gaza envelope. And he'd first went there 50 years before. And he spent a lot of time volunteering there. But it was a very moving speech where he talked about what special places that kibbutz was for him and in general. And at the end, he revealed that he knew personally 3 people who'd been murdered and several who were taken hostage, including an 86-year-old man. When he was talking, as I mentioned at first, he talked about his whole experience of coming to know the kibbutz, and as an American tourist at first, just landing there one day and out of the blue asking them, well, I'd like to join the kibbutz. And they, at first, were not so happy about him joining on a whim, but they saw he was serious and they were willing to take him in, and they expected him to work. And it wasn't always the easiest life for him, but he loved it, and the people were amazing. And the other young people his age there were interesting and vibrant, and the whole community, young and old, it sounded like it really transformed his whole life being in that kibbutz. A little, as he said, or maybe Arya said, a little corner of paradise. It was really like a little special place. And it made me think at the time of these communities that were struck, and of the whole kibbutz movement in general, and of my own father, who landed in Israel, age 15, from Canada, and heard the luggage handler speak in Hebrew, and suddenly feeling moved, said, I've got to live in this place. In the following summer, he went to a kibbutz and helped in the orchards and met other young people, and I just loved it. To love the life, the vibrancy, the land, the hard work, and the amazing weather, the sense of freedom and of being part of this shared endeavor of the community. And the kibbutzim are a little bit different than they were back then, but I've always found that there's especially around those that are still very vibrant, that they still have the quality of idealism and of communal life, and of connection to the land, and of a greater good, of easy friendships, and a sense of well-being that comes from being on the land, and of having a sense of shared living with other people. It made me think of the show that so many of us have been watching on Netflix about the blue zones, about the areas of the world where there are the most people who live to 100, and what are the factors that give people that well-being. And it's also true about many Israelis I've met who grew up on those kibbutzim, and partly reflects the whole era in the country. We do romanticize it a little bit, but I think there's very much truth to it too. And they all have something, this special quality. And in my mind, it shows that what they were building in those years, or in the kibbutzim, was something that was beautiful and powerful, and imparted that to a whole group of people. And then the Torah teaches us that, right, this is a land that vomits out its inhabitants, the words of the Torah. Meaning if you don't live well, then it's not an easy land. But to me, it was so clear, and still clear, that all that world, there was something so right about it. And we sometimes called the beautiful Israel, Yisrael Hayafa, and that an exceptional way of living in the land, and capture the society that had high aspirations and didn't get everything right, but they were trying to live a certain way and had worth and togetherness. And so in the Torah last week, the meditation was all about what does it mean that as individuals, we all have a choice in life about how we live our life, which is one of the ideas that's been on my mind this whole period. Well, how do you live? What does it mean to be a human being? That was last week. Choose between your good inclination and your not so good inclination, really your evil inclination, and how that expresses itself in small ways and in big ways in all of our journeys, how we each go through life and try and at least struggle with that part of us that wants to lead us to narrowness and to hate and anger and jealousy, and it can eventually lead to barbarism. But this week, the Torah and God take it to a different place. And it's really about what kind of society are you going to build when people come together and when people share a consciousness about what a society should be about. What type of nation? What kind of society? A fundamental question that's at the center of Judaism. And how do you come together as a people to teach values of compassion and to teach to your children, to one another, kindness and beauty and love, all the things that we hold dear. And how important it is for human beings to live in community asking those questions. Because when they do not, when they don't struggle with that, what it leads to. And this is what we see in our Torah. And the Torah, in this portion, the Torah is clear about what happens when human beings descend into the wrong type of society and where that leads human beings, because we influence each other. And the earth becomes corrupt before God, the Torah says, and the earth is filled with lawlessness, or right, the strange irony that lawless violence is called Hamas in the Torah. Quote, when God saw how corrupt the earth was, for all flesh had corrupted its ways on earth, God said to Noah, I have decided to put an end to all flesh, for the earth is filled with lawless violence because of them. I'm about to destroy them with the earth. So the commentaries explain that the people at this time had just allowed everything to descend into complete evil. They were rotten. They stole freely. The powerless were abused. There was rampant violence of every kind. The kind of behavior we saw 2 weeks ago, complete absence of humanity. And a lesson that when one person loses their battle with their Yetzer Hara, with their evil inclination, then gives permission for others to do it too. And others follow suit. And they completely give in. They lose a battle as a society, listening to their evil inclination. Then there's no more battle, and it's just let loose, and how hard it is to put it back in once it's been let loose, and where that leads to no hope. And the Midrash has these whole series of Midrashim where it talks about that it wasn't only that there was violence, but it wasn't a wild violence. They said it was a sophisticated lawlessness at the time of Noah. The people were sophisticated in how they went about it. It was cold. Even when there were laws, they were trying to avoid the letter of the law by doing things that were evil, but going underneath it. They were smart in their lawlessness. It's not hard for us to see some of this, those who put their own citizens to die to win public opinion, who lie about bombs in hospitals, who revel in brainwashing youth, who coldly commit atrocity. In the Or HaChaim, Moroccan commentator referring to the deluge, says, well, when a person commits one sin, it puts pressure on the divine courts to pass judgment. And in Noah's time, there were just so many sins that God made his decree. And after this, later, after the whole story of Noah and the flood, there is another story in our Parsha where another civilization arises, and they're even more sophisticated than the previous one, as the Midrash describes the time of Noah. And in a sense, they are less wicked, but still not what God is looking for, right? These are the builders of the Tower of Babel. And they see themselves as gods, and they build this tower that reaches up to the heavens. And it's a story that we see in our days as a lesson against the worship of technology and of our own self-importance, trying to build towers to rival or challenge the heavens. This also leads humanity to error and sin. And to Judaism at the time, it was making a statement about those civilizations of Mesopotamia. And scholars believe, right, that the Tower of Babel, just like those pyramids that were built in that part of the world, and those mega, for that time, cities. And so what's God's answer to what kind of society do you build after he sees these first two societies fall into violence? Well, he begins to work more closely, all right? He reveals himself and how to live a righteous path, first to one person, Abraham, and to his wife, Sarah, and then tries to spread it slowly and carefully, because how hard it is to live righteously, to a family of shepherds, and then becomes a nation of slaves, to spread ethics and more morals, and to build a type of world that humans should be trying to build in partnership with spirit, a society of high values, a society of worth. And in our collective Jewish imagination, the ultimate expression of that is the heavenly Jerusalem, the Jerusalem of the Psalms, a city of peace where people find inspiration, as the Psalm says, where people find unity within it. That's the kind of society where we build temples for human beings to worship and to find that peace in. And so millennia later, as a Jewish people, our goal is still to try and hold on to that ancient path that was first taught to one person of what it means to live righteously, building societies of love and kindness and cities of peace, and expressing our free will as a society in that way. So it means to me that also as we battle evil and even go to war, because going to war is also part of being a righteous people and of tikkun olam, of repairing the world. Sometimes is not only social justice, it's also removing evil, as the Nazis, as the Soviet Union. But there are also moral red lines we need to keep in our own hearts as we go about it, to not be blinded by vengeance or hate ourselves, and to believe that as Abraham, that they're righteous in every society that we should stand up for and try to save. And that we're ultimately called to create a world in the end that's just as the prophets envisioned, as challenging as it may seem, a world where the wolf dwells with the lamb. And everyone is part of us. Every one of us is part of that. Every Jew, every human being. And it's an individual quest, but then it also becomes a societal quest, a human endeavor, to keep striving to build those communities and dwellings of love, of kindness, where we live in harmony and truth, connected through love and through a sense of common sacrifice, revealing the spark within, and believing that when we do build them, even when they're small, even when they don't spread so far, that they create a model that impacts others, and that just as evil is when one person lets go of their battle with the Yetzer Hara, with evil inclination to influence others, even when one person does the opposite and fights that evil inclination and finds that place within them, that also spreads. And every time we build a little, even however small, a community of love and harmony and peace, all those who come in touch with it are moved for their whole lives. And that this choice that we each have, how to contribute and how to live with the people around us, we all can express in small ways how we go about our lives, even here, how we talk to the people in our lives, our family members, our neighbors, how we model that behavior to the next generation who will inherit the world, and hopefully not the same set of problems we have, but probably some of them. And also we just choose how we take up another person's influence or not, or how we push it away and say, this is not how I'm going to live. How we take all of our thoughts, all of our actions, and try and mold them to our aspirations while girding ourselves what must be done. Shabbat Shalom.